which, by the way, looking at M1's face, that's Mother. But
ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs, the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host of the Toast, Ryan Toast, to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. And this is the first episode I'm recording post-vacation, which is part of the reason why it's so late. So my original plan was I prepped everything to be ready for the week before and the week during vacation. So is this too, I feel like this is too drastic of an angle. Maybe I'll move the camera and be a little crazy. There we go. That feels better, because the camera's way to my right, which is throwing me off. So we went on vacation last week. This is the first episode I'm recording after, and I prepped everything to be ready during and before vacation, so that the day I get back from vacation, I can get right back to work. So I had nothing prepped for after vacation, because the plan was we get back Friday night, Saturday morning, and Saturday I would just work my ass off and reestablish everything. And both of my children caught hand, foot, and mouth at the end of vacation, to the point where, like, Friday night, Saturday morning, my youngest started showing symptoms, and Saturday night, Sunday morning, my oldest started showing symptoms. And Amanda also caught hand, foot, and mouth, which is also a rare thing, because apparently, once you're over, like, 5 years old, it's incredibly rare to catch hand, foot, and mouth. But, you know, I guess we're just lucky. Now, I mean, I should be thankful that it's just hand, foot, and mouth, because, you know, that's a pretty minor, well, it's not minor illness, but it's a viral infection that is very common. 99.9% of the time, it passes on its own, and you just manage symptoms while it's happening. You know, so we should be thankful that it's just that, and, like, we didn't get COVID or something, God forbid. Granted, we're all vaccinated, but you know what I mean. But it definitely pushed back the time that I was able to work, because my wife is sick, so she can't take care of the boys, and the boys need very hands-on help. And I couldn't even, typically when the kids are sick, I'll work at night, and I'll just, like, pull an all-nighter. But my oldest is so uncomfortable, at least he was the past 2 nights, that he needed to be held to sleep. And we have 2 kids, and we can't both do that, you know? So the both 2 nights, I was like, well, I'm here now. But luckily, you know, everyone's feeling better. They still have their hand, foot, mouth rashes, but the fevers are down. The mood is a lot brighter today. So luckily I'm here now. All this to say, yes, this is going to be a very late podcast. Oops. Luckily the shorts are done. You know, the second channel and social media gameplay shorts, they're done. And I'm trying my best to get shorts back on the main channel. For anyone who doesn't really know the YouTube business side of things, YouTube shorts, unless you're making like huge bust out the wall viral videos every time you make a YouTube shorts pretty much pay dirt, right? Like, they do not pay at all. They don't benefit you in many ways, but they don't benefit you monetarily. But the thing about YouTube Shorts is they have a much wider reach, and have that potential to go viral and can link back to your channel. And YouTube has said that, and I've seen it, that its algorithm, if you watch somebody's YouTube Shorts enough, their regular videos will start popping up in your recommended feeds. So while YouTube Shorts don't really pay anything, they do help get your name out there and get your channel out there. So any creators watching this, make sure you're doing your shorts. It's like eating your vegetables. Nobody really likes making YouTube shorts, but you should. And it's something that I really have neglected on the main channel, just because since it doesn't benefit me monetarily, it takes a sidestep to the things that I didn't have a lot of time to do. But luckily, having my own space, and, you know, having this standing desk that I can walk on a treadmill and edit on to help me focus, you know, I'm able to get a lot more work done. So expect YouTube Shorts to happen again on the main channel, something that has really taken a sidestep. Yeah, I guess that's everything. That's the me update, is that, you know, we're back to it. I do have one more thing, because we're going to talk about the FNAF movie very briefly before. This is mainly a questions episode. Because I didn't answer questions for a week, so I've got a whole backlog to go through. I went and reacted and analyzed the FNAF Movie 2 trailer on Twitch. And that's something that I didn't do on YouTube because it was the first day back, and it was kind of just like a celebration that Twitch is going to happen again because it didn't happen for a week. But I realized that, like, that's content that I'm sure a lot of you guys would want to watch from me. It's like me breaking down the FNAF 2 movie trailer and talking with chat and kind of theorizing about it. But I'm not going to make a main channel video about the FNAF 2 movie trailer because I don't have a lot to say, like theory-wise, because my initial FNAF movie theory is still pretty, like, intact. It's still fairly close to what I had already predicted, and if I made a theory video, it's just kind of me being like, yeah, like I said in the last video, I think this is going to happen, and this trailer kind of backs that up a little bit. Like, there are some things that I think I got wrong, but at this point, I think I'm going to need to wait until the movie comes out to make another theory on it. That being said, that reaction I do want to bring to you guys on YouTube because I understand not everybody has a Twitch account or wants to make a Twitch account, and or, watching a previous live stream, like a video on Twitch, is miserable. Twitch has a really good live stream interface and a miserable VOD watching interface. So I'm trying to figure the best way to do it. I might just edit it down and put it on the second channel. I don't know yet, but it probably won't come onto this channel. But when I do figure out what I'm doing with that video, I'll let you guys know either in a YouTube community post or something like that, but it'll probably end up on the second channel. I think that makes the most sense. But yeah, speaking of today's topic, the FNAF 2 movie looks really good. Most of my thoughts are going to be in that video. But, like, initial thoughts is everything looks amazing. The fact that we're getting a FNAF 2 office segment is awesome. I had a complaint about the first movie. I had two complaints about the first movie because I generally really liked the first FNAF movie. I think it was kind of the best we could have expected to get. And I had a couple complaints. And the main two complaints was that, one, and this is such a nitpick, but I really was disappointed that we didn't get, I guess really both complaints are nitpicks in that way, but there was two things we didn't get in the movie that I think I really, really wanted to see done in a movie that we just didn't get. The first one being, like, any usage of the cameras. Now, again, I'm not one of those people who said, like, the FNAF movie should have just been Mike Schmidt surviving in an office for 2 hours. I think that would have gotten really old really fast. I don't think a movie of using cameras makes any sense. However, I think there could have been a segment, like somewhere near the climax, they have to keep the animatronics away while Abby's doing something. And to do that, they bunker down in the office. Someone's working the doors. Someone's working the cameras. I think that could have been cool, and I think it would have assuaged a lot of complaints that were like, oh, this movie is so different than the games. And I would have liked to see that. And the other thing is that it's weird to me that we never got Freddy, like, doing the Toreador March or anything like that. Like, I was so sure at some point power was going to go out and Freddy was going to do his little jingle somewhere. And that didn't really happen. And again, does this make the movie worse? No. But those are really my two complaints, with these, like, really iconic moments from the games that could have been translated to the movie weren't. And, watching the FNAF 2 movie trailer, it seems like that's not going to be a problem for this second movie. Because, like, look, are the movies the same as the games? Hell no. They are very different. They are their own interpretations. But clearly, it seems like they're taking more from the games this time around, to the point where the FNAF 2 movie trailer ends with Mike Schmidt essentially doing a FNAF 2 segment where he's in an office that, yes, the office isn't one-to-one and the hallway isn't one-to-one, but it is clearly a very close homage and representation of that FNAF 2 office. And he has the Freddy mask. Withered Chica shows up. He puts it on. She seems to stop attacking him. Bonnie's coming out of a vent. It's like, this is a FNAF 2 office section. He's got a flashlight, for fuck's sake. Like, it's really, really cool. And that's what it seems like. FNAF 2 movie is going to be even better. Like, it looks like it's the FNAF 1 movie with this new interesting story that we get to learn, but with some of those, missing homages to the games that we kind of missed out on in the first movie. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So I'm super excited for it. But that's really like the majority of what I had to say about the trailer is that it looks really good, and I'm curious where they're taking the story. But again, keep an eye out for the second channel. Maybe that'll be Thursday's video. If I can't edit, I'm trying to edit together the Secret of the Mimic at 0% brightness stream that I started on YouTube, and I had to end because my internet was being weird. I did finish the game on Twitch that night, but I'm going to make sure to, I'm working on it right now, editing that video together, because it's like 4 different streams because my internet and power kept being weird. It felt like I was playing a FNAF game in real life. It was crazy. But I'm editing that together to make it like a watchable YouTube video, so like you guys don't miss out on that either. And that way it's easier to rewatch, because trying to watch the VODs, not only do you have to watch it on Twitch, but then you have to sift through like 4 different VODs. It's crazy. So I'm working on that. It was planned to be Thursday. Maybe that gets pushed back to Tuesday, and I'll do the movie reaction for Thursday. I don't know yet. That I'll figure that out after I'm done recording this, essentially. But yeah, no, it looks really solid. I cannot wait for it. But the majority of today's podcast is going to be questions. So if you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com, which is in the description to copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. And don't forget, Rytoast, the channels, are partnered with Gamersupps. This is their JoJo collab cup or tumbler from, I don't know, a month or so ago. But I'm drinking, it's funny, I'm drinking 2 different collab things, because the cup is JoJo's, the beverage, the lid isn't, I swapped them around. The beverage is Cursed Energy, the Jujutsu Kaisen flavor. It's a raspberry tea. It's actually really, really good. This is the non-caffeine. They have caffeine and non-caffeine. They actually just also started canned, but that might have sold out by now. I think the plan is to eventually put them in stores. I don't know. But yeah, you know, code RYTOAST for 10% off your whole order. I've been drinking it for like a year and a half. I really like it. And unlike their competitor, who shall not be named, they've never been accused of having lead in their drinks by the court of California. Anyway, our first question comes from Aaron He/Him. Do you think the Withered animatronics and or the FNAF 1 animatronics will join forces with Mike, Abby, and Vanessa to take down the toy animatronics? This is about the movie. Similar to how animatronics from the Silver Eyes joined forces with Charlie and Co. and the Twisted Ones to take down the Twisted animatronics. Yes. So, yes, period. Next. But essentially, if you haven't, I'll put it here if I remember. But if you haven't seen my initial, and I feel like a lot of people haven't, because they keep saying like, oh, the new trailer kind of continues to reinforce what I think is going to happen in this new movie. And people are like, well, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, well, I made a video on it. Go watch it. But essentially, my main prediction for the FNAF 2 movie, and a lot of people's predictions, is that it's going to be very much inspired by the Twisted Ones, where the toy animatronics are the Twisted animatronics. They are animatronics that are wandering around, making their way towards Abby and Co., and trying to kidnap Abby. Maybe Vanessa. You know, it's possible they're trying to kidnap Vanessa because she's the one directly connected to William as far as we're aware. But I think it is going to, for the plot, I think it makes more sense that they're trying to kidnap Abby. And, you know, eventually the Withereds are going to be introduced as a possible threat, but by the climax of the movie, the Withereds are going to protect Abby and Co. from the toy animatronics long enough that they can defeat them, and William will probably show up as a reveal of Springtrap at the end of the movie to set up for the third movie. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially because I think a majority of William, or of, you know, Matthew Lillard's screen time as William is going to be flashbacks. I think we're going to learn a lot about what he's done. Looking at the trailer, we seem to be getting clips of, you know, either him killing Charlie or, I don't know, maybe the DCI. I'd say the MCI, but the kid we see in the trailer doesn't look like any of the MCI kids. That's where a lot of the theories come about, the idea of that's Charlie and Sammy, because they don't really look like anyone else we've seen. Not to mention Skeet Ulrich, the counterpart to Matthew Lillard in the original Scream, which is an amazing, awesome casting decision that was made, has been confirmed at a San Diego Comic-Con panel to be casted as Henry. That's awesome. The idea that they got the 2 people who played, you know, Ghostface in Scream, that pair, to be William and Henry in this movie is an amazing, like, shout out to horror movie history, and that's awesome. But since Henry's being cast, it's like, okay, we're doing FNAF 2, Henry's being cast, the puppet's a big thing, I guess Charlie's going to be here, and if that girl is Charlie, she's holding a little boy, is that little boy Sammy, you know? Or is this like a weird ghost rendition of the DCI of Save Them, and that's like Charlie's spirit holding onto a dead kid? Who knows, you know? That's something that I think we're going to be able to see. But yes, to answer your question, I think it's very, very likely that the way the plot is going to go is that the toy animatronics will be acting like the Twisted animatronics from the Twisted runs, trying to chase down Abby, and by the end of the movie, the withered animatronics will protect them and, you know, stall for enough time so that the main crew can do something to destroy the toys. Because I think it is noteworthy that in the original movie, you know, the original animatronics were very friendly to the entire group until William forced them to be otherwise. You know, like they were building a fucking a fort, you know, they built a fort together. They're just kids in there. And I think the Withereds are going to maintain that. But thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Kevin and y'all. You have said in the past that you believe M1 might have been behind David's death because of Moon.exe and all that. But you also said you don't know why. But this fits perfectly with the paperclip maximizer fallacy. The basics of the fallacy is if you tell an AI to make as many paperclips as possible, it would eventually realize humans are taking up matter that could be used for paperclips, and it would go rogue. Now we have M1, an AI motherbot with one prime directive: be a mother to a kid. But then M1 realizes that David will grow up and she will lose the kid. She wants to keep her child, not a teen. What is one way to keep a child forever? Kill him and get Edwin to make a new David. Somebody also watched the FNAF video. Speaking of, if you guys haven't watched FNAF's video on Secret of the Mimic, the one that just got put out, go watch it. If I remember, I'll put it right here. Really, really solid video. I think it's, if the Mimic is not possessed, that video is my preferred explanation for what's going on in Secret of the Mimic. It's really, really well argued and well executed. And I'll get on my soapbox for a second, too. I've said in the most recent video I put out that I think the reason M1 is such a successful copy of Fiona is because it's possessed, and people have rightly called out that language that I used, which is true. That is I misspoke when I said that. Because M1 is not a perfect copy of Fiona. M1 is like Edwin's idea of what Fiona could have been, right? M1 is such like a weird, like perfect housewife that never complains, whereas Fiona's a human being. So I didn't mean to say that M1 was so accurate to Fiona because she was a spirit. What I was trying to say was the game establishes that M1 was successful, but Edwin could not figure out how to make M2. So I was more so explaining that M1 was successful, I think, because of possession in some way, and M2 wasn't successful because there was no possession. Is that like guaranteed the reason? No. I think there are several other explanations. I think FNAF's explanation is really good. I think dual process theory's explanation is really good. I also like the idea that, you know, Edwin's just kind of a bad inventor, and maybe he did it by accident the first time. And, you know, he does eventually make M2 as a copy of M1, so that might just be, it might literally just be, I couldn't figure out how to do it again, so I just copied my homework, you know? But anyway, to the question in particular, yes. I think if M1 kills David, I don't think it's because it's possessed. I think, and it could be possessed still, but I think the only logical reason M1 kills David is some sort of cold calculating AI program of, I want to be a mother, this child will grow up, and I will eventually no longer be a mother. To maximize my time being a mother, I need a permanent child. Well, when Fiona died, Edwin made fake Fiona. So if David dies, Edwin will make fake David, and I will be mother forever. Which, by the way, looking at M1's face, that's mother. But, but yeah, looking into it, it's like, yes, I think that's the only really logical explanation for why M1 would have killed David, which isn't a guarantee. I think it is still very possible David dies as an accident. But I think it is, you know, I think the game gives us a lot of evidence that points to M1 killing David, right? The idea that like David's playground is right next to the shipping yard, but you know, there's a fence, there's a gate, he'll be okay. And M1 is specifically the person who goes to get David the day he dies. It's like, okay, well, M1 might be the one who kills David. Similar to like, it was something that I always thought of in the story The Mimic, which is drastically different, to be fair. But in the story The Mimic, it's never really explained how David dies outside of, there was a ball, it's going out in the road, there was a car, and it was going to hit him. But, the door was like left unlocked or left open, and that's why the ball goes out of the house in the first place. So I do wonder if the Mimic opened the door, maybe even not to kill David, but it was always a thought in the back of my mind of like, did the Mimic open the door to maybe play outside or for any other number of reasons, or maybe to kill David, right? Like, there was always a plausible deniability that the Mimic killed David in the story The Mimic. So the idea that M1 kills David in the games isn't without merit, especially with the evidence in front of us and what the game is suggesting. But yeah, if M1 kills David, I think it is primarily because the AI calculated, I want to be a mother as long as possible, I need a permanent child. Because I can't see a reason why Fiona, of all things, would do that. And frankly, I can't see a reason why an otherwise motherly M1 would do that if not for that cold calculating nature of machinery. But thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Tiana and y'all. What if Michael isn't a full-on zombie or walking corpse? I know the game shows us otherwise, but again, and I don't like it much, but it was based on what Fazbear's Entertainment told an indie developer to show the public. From what I remember is that the scooper and sister location is also a Remnant injector, and when Michael is scooped, he was then injected with Remnant and of the spirits used in the Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Remnant has regenerative properties, and the skin is the largest organ on the human body. So what if Michael's skin was regenerated over time? Maybe not his organs that were removed, that by the time he works at the pizzeria, he is back to looking like his father. It would explain how he's able to get the job as security and still explain the odor. Thank you for your question. I'm actually going to combine your question with Chanel, she, her, somebody else who sent in a similar question. If Remnant is a tool to possess the animatronics after injecting molten metal Remnant into the Funtime animatronics, would that mean other things / people injected with Remnant are also possessed by spirits of the MCI? If so, would Michael Afton be at least partially possessed by Remnant? What would that mean for the lore? So I kind of wanted to combine this, because it is a really interesting topic of why, like, what happens to Michael Afton after sister location. If the scooper is a Remnant injector, which it is, and if it had Remnant on it, which the blueprints specifically state trace amounts of Remnant may be left on the machinery after use. Like, this is all being set up that when Michael Afton gets scooped, it's very likely that some Remnant gets injected into his body while it's happening. So the question is, right, like, what is going on? And I think, and then, we see him stand up after Ennard leaves his body. So I've said for a while, and I'm just going to continue to say what I've been saying because I agree with it, is that I think we're seeing that, yes, Michael is able to take control over his body again because of the Remnant in him. We know Remnant has healing properties. We see this in Frailty, where our main character scrapes Remnant off of her necklace onto hospital patients and they miraculously get better, right? Like, Remnant seems to be this cure-all. It's this like positive energy that can save someone. But I think it's multifaceted. So I've said that I've kind of gone down this train before, but I think it's really interesting that in a way, Michael's body becomes a springlock suit in sister location, because the whole point of a springlock suit is that the endoskeleton is always inside the suit, but it is held to the sides when a human person goes inside. So Michael's body, I think he's not being emptied by the scooper. I think a cavern is being made and Ennard gets inside. And when he does, those organs are shoved to the sides of his body, probably ruptured, probably destroyed. But in a way, that's a reverse springlock suit. It's his body and his internals being moved aside for a robot to enter. But I agree. I think his body can't reform itself with Ennard inside, and that's why his body begins to rot. But because of the Remnant that had been injected into him, once Ennard leaves, I think his body does begin to heal. So the question is he still alive? I sure hope he died and possesses his body or something, because if he's still alive, that means Michael lived during all of that physical torment until Ennard gave up on his body, which sounds like the worst thing I could possibly imagine. But regardless, I do think Michael slowly begins to heal after that, at least to enough to be plausibly human, to like the a person who looks at him. But I also think, yes, we have evidence to suggest that once Remnant is injected in your body in some way, you are better connected with the spirits who were injected into your body. We see a direct example of this in the third book of the novel trilogy, The Fourth Closet, where in that book, William Afton, as a way to maybe kill this guy and also do a bit of an experiment, takes a syringe of Remnant and injects it directly into the heart of, I believe, Carlton, and it knocks him out. He basically blacks out, and he's like, oh, okay, I guess it killed him. But then we see that, again, I think it's Carlton, he is able to see and directly talk to the spirits of the MCI, the people whose remnant were injected into him. And he helps them gather their thoughts enough that they can remember that William Afton is the bad guy, turn on William Afton, and kill him. It's very similar to the end of the first FNAF movie. So we get this moment where, like, Carlton is injected with Remnant, and he can immediately see and talk to the spirits of the MCI. And then once that's all resolved, they have this note, right? The like memory image that they've created, and all the kids start moving on and finding peace because William is dead. And Carlton's like, wait, you're drawing. And I think it was Michael Brooks in the book, which is not Michael Afton, confusing naming, but he hands the drawing back and he's like, no, you need this. You'll die without it. You can give this back to me when I see you again, right? Like some moment like that, and he leaves. And then that's when Carlton kind of wakes up, either in the hospital or then they go to the hospital. But it seems like, right, if this drawing is their memories, aka their remnant, it seems like Carlton gets injected with Remnant and it kills his body. But because he has Remnant in him and he keeps that Remnant after helping the MCI kids, his body is able to recover in a way that doesn't really make sense otherwise. So I think yes. I think the answer is yes. Michael Afton being injected with Remnant not only means his body would eventually regenerate, but I think it explains why Michael Afton begins to have visions of the crying child and possibly the other victims. In fact, I think that's what we're seeing in the security logbook, something that takes place likely during or after FNAF 3, which I think would be after Sister Location. So I think it's Michael Afton, once he realizes he's starting to get this sense of his dead brother and other dead spirits, he starts using the logbook to try to communicate with them, something that happens after he's been injected by Remnant, which is why he begins to see them. I think that's a very clear and concise timeline. I think that makes a lot of sense in my brain. So thank you, Tiana, and thank you, Chanel, for your questions. Our next question comes from Jelty, he, him. So recently I was making a drawing of Jackie and noticed something weird in her ruin form. There are black streaks / tears under her eyes, which implies agony may be at play. It would make sense if the mimic is infused with agony, then something snapped. What if Jackie looks so broken because of the agony of the mimic and other animatronics get destroyed over time, like Jackie? The Glamrocks. So what if the Glamrocks are infused with agony? But how? I have an answer, the charging stations. I think the charging stations are not only giving the Glamrocks power, but how does the Pizzaplex get agony? Simple, the photo booths. You might be surprised in VIP, when you save your brother, he comes out of a photo booth. He hands you a strip of photos, and in the first photos, he looks happy, making goofy expressions, then he's red-faced and crying. As the images progress, they become a self-portrait of abject misery. What do you think of this theory? Do you see any flaws? Let me summarize that, because it was a little awkwardly worded. Essentially, the theory is that if the mimic has agony in it and Jackie has agony because of the mimic, and there's that damage over time, maybe that's why the Glamrock animatronics are taking damage over time of security breach, because of this agony slowly deteriorating them throughout the night. And then it's like, how would agony be getting there? Either the charging stations or through the charging stations, and it's being collected from the photo booths. I like parts of this. So I think the photo booth collecting agony, I don't really see that, because in VIP, I think what we're seeing is the kid was locked inside of a photo booth. So we're seeing his reaction to that over time, that like, at first he was like, oh, I'm in a photo booth, this is very silly. And then as it goes on, he begins to get more and more miserable, realizing he is never going to get out of this photo booth. And that's the misery we're seeing. I don't think that's collecting agony. I think it's just showing us he was trapped and scared. However, we go into the idea of Remnant and agony and what these two things do. And I do want to point out, I don't know if the animatronics the Mimic wears are getting infected with the Mimic's Agony if it has Agony, which I think it does, but I do think it's important to talk about Jackie's black tear streaks, but I want to stick to Glamrox, and I want to focus on the Glamrox for your question. So with the Glamrox, it is really interesting to consider the idea of Remnant Plex, or that theory that was first put out there by She's Always Nervous, that the Pizzaplex itself is being powered by Remnant and collecting it in the basement. With that scooper, right? And I made a whole video talking about her theory. She has a whole video on it, so go watch those videos. I'll put them here if I remember, to better explain that. But then the question is like, okay, so how does that interact with all this? Well, I think it's interesting. If we consider the animatronics having Agony in them in some way, then the deterioration throughout the night actually does make a lot of sense if we consider Remnant. So we don't super know the specifics of how Remnant and Agony interact, but if the animatronics are being powered by Remnant, they would also be being repaired and kept shiny and new because of the Remnant, because Remnant has that quality that if it's in something like robotic or something like that, it'll heal it over time, same with human bodies. But Agony does a similar thing in the opposite direction, where Agony does seem to age and destroy things, right? Like when someone is killed with Agony in the Fazbear Frights books, they seem to like shrivel up like a prune and just die. So it's really interesting to consider if the animatronics, and this falls apart with Glamrock Freddy, so maybe not, but if the animatronics are infected with Agony and they charge with Remnant at the like end of the night or beginning of the night or whatever, then their deterioration starts to make sense. The idea that, like, you know, if Gregory wasn't here, the animatronics would just be charging overnight, but instead, they got some charge, and throughout the rest of the night are not charging, and are instead chasing after Gregory, then over time, that Agony is starting to, like, cripple their bodies until they eventually are, like, inoperable by the end of the night. And they need to charge to not only regain that Remnant energy, but to fix their animatronic exoskeletons. I think it's a really interesting concept. Now, this does kind of fall apart with Glamrock Freddy, because the whole night, he's also deteriorating, but we charge him like every 10 minutes. I think, you know, either it's a gameplay thing, either I'm wrong, or there is an explanation here that continues this theory to be correct, that being that, you know, he's on limited power. So this charge isn't really like, you know, fully charging him. It's just keeping him operable. And then that's where that's coming in. I don't, you know, now that I think about it, I feel like maybe She's Always Nervous covered this in Remnant Plex. I don't really remember. But, you know, if so, again, go watch our video. It's a good video. And then as far as Jackie and the Mimic are involved with this question, I don't know if the Mimic's Agony, if it has Agony, would be deteriorating the exoskeletons that quickly, because all of the damage we see in Secret of the Mimic is very explainable, right? Like, Jackie gets damaged because we damaged Jackie. She's chasing us and she's not damaged, and then she's forcing herself through small corridors, bumping into things, getting damaged. We smash her face in a doorway and her face gets damaged. Dolly is perfectly fine when we see her. Then the Mimic breaks off her feet to chase us, so that's damage. And then we drop her in a vat of molten metal, which damages her further. You know, like, we've damaged all of these animatronics in a way that I think explains the damage they're taking. What I think is notable, and we do have to talk about, is how similar Jackie looks to the marionette, and especially Night Marionette. Because it is important to point out that by that last phase we see Jackie, she's got those black tear streaks that Night Marionette has. So it's like, huh? There's multiple things we have to talk about, because that's similar. Obviously, Jackie's box is similar to the Puppet's box, like one-to-one music-wise, right? And we have this thing in every goddamn Steel Wool era FNAF game where there are Night Marionette plushes all over the place. I think you would be insane to not assume there's some kind of connection here. Do I know what the connection is? No, that's something that's going to take a while to figure out. But there's some kind of connection here. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Ben, they, them. Don't you think it's a little odd that in FNAF 6, when you play Fruity Maze, it's revealed that Susie's dog got hit and ran over by a car, and in Security Breach, you run over Roxy with a go-kart? Coincidence? I'm not sure. I think it's a coincidence, but I had to put this on here because it's such a funny coincidence that like Susie's dog was hit with a car and that was used to kidnap Susie and kill her. And it's so funny that the coincidence is the one dog adjacent character in Security Breach also gets hit by a car. That's really funny. I don't think it's on purpose. I don't think it means anything. It is just a really funny coincidence, and I wanted to bring it up. But thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Gavin. Him. Cassie's grandfather. If it's true, then that would mean... Oh, sorry, I cut off the beginning of this. I think Arnold might be Cassie's grandfather. If it's true, then that would mean Cassie and her family have been dealing with the Mimic during different times. It would also mean these recent games are about a new family besides the Aftons, the Emilys, or the Murrays. Cassie's family, who I personally think are the Fitzgeralds. Ruin, Cassie Fitzgerald, Help Wanted 2, Cassie's dad, Jeremy Fitzgerald, and Secret of the Mimic, Cassie's granddad, Arnold Fitzgerald. Oh, I so want this to be true, but I just don't think it is. I love the idea that it's this family that's constantly had to put up with FNAF. It's just kind of funny that like this family throughout all of their life is just trying to live a normal life and keeps having to deal with this shit. But I don't think it's true for a couple reasons. I think the timeline does make sense here. All right, the idea that Cassie's Arnold is like a young adult, like 20s, 30s in the 70s, right? And then his kid becomes a night guard for the restaurant sometime in the late 80s. And then, you know, the timeline's a little wonky from then to Ruin because that's like a 50-year gap, but it is possible. So I guess the timeline actually isn't that great. But I there's another main reason why I don't think this works is that I like the idea of Cassie's dad being, I've been won over, especially by ID's Fantasies interpretations of things. I've been won over the idea that Cassie's dad was Jeremy from Help Wanted 1. I don't love the idea of Cassie's dad being Jeremy from FNAF 2 because of the week before. In the week before, the Bite of 87 is backed up again to be an employee, but he also in the same breath says that like that victim, the damage he suffered to his frontal lobe, yes, they're alive, but they really can't do much. They can't, you know, argue for themselves. They can't like say what happened. They're just barely alive. So I don't know if someone who had that happen to them in the 80s could be working at the Security Breach Pizzaplex in like the 30s, like 50 years later. You know, maybe after enough time he recovered enough to be able to work a normal job again, but I think that injury, if it made them that like if it gave them that much trouble, I don't think they would be working an intense job 50 years later. So I think that's the main issue here is, one, timeline is a little wonky. If he's like, you know, late teens in the 80s, then he'd have like a 8-year-old kid in the 30s. He'd be having a kid at like 65, 70. Which is possible, you know, it's possible, but it's a wonky timeline if so. And I don't think Cassie's dad being bit by Foxy, which I'm standing on and dying on, in FNAF 2 makes a lot of sense with what we hear about the victim in the week before. That being said, I do still think Cassie's dad was Help Wanted 1 Jeremy. And I think that's what it is. I think it's, you know, like we keep hearing in these interviews with like Steelwool and with Scott that like history doesn't repeat, but it echoes. I think there are parallels in FNAF's timeline within the timeline. And I think the idea that a Jeremy gets damage to their head is a parallel that Scott either thinks is funny to keep doing, or maybe there is a meaning somewhere in there. But the idea that Jeremy in FNAF 2 gets bit in the frontal lobe, and Jeremy in Help Wanted gets his head and face damaged with the paper slicer. Like, I think that is just like a thing that's kind of a funny connection between them. But I don't know. This all to say, I think Arnold is just a guy. I don't think it's Arnold Fitzgerald, as much as I do like that. I mean, you know, maybe it's Arnold Fitzgerald in the sense that, you know, the FNAF 2 night guard might be his son. We do have that cut line where he's like, I haven't seen my wife and kid in forever or whatever. But I don't think I don't think Arnold is related to Cassie's family. I don't think the timeline works there, and I don't think anyone who's damaged FNAF 2 will go on to do the things we see in Ruin. In Help Wanted 2. But thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Zoids, he, him. I had a thought about Dolly and the recycling center. Could this recycling Edwin coined be a farm for Remnant and Agony? My thought process took me to the fun times and how they were melted into one creature. Could this recycling be how MCM has enough molten Agony to power the place? Well, a couple things. It'd be molten Remnant, but I see where you're coming from. Like, immediately, I see where you're coming from because I had the same thought. It's the idea that, like, this whole building is powered by molten metal. This entire building melts down robots and powers the rest of the building by directing that molten glowing metal through pipes. So immediately I'm like, that is Remnant coded. The idea of like molten metal that is shiny being used to power something. It's like, oh my God, it's Remnant. But there's a big pause that needs to happen. Remnant isn't just shiny metal. Remnant is the mixture of metal and spiritual energy. You need people to die to make Remnant. That's, if all of that molten metal is supposed to be Remnant, that's a lot of dead people. That is a lot of, like, that's not just one or two accidents here and there. This would be like a constant conveyor belt of people dying to power this factory. You know, like, Security Breach has the plausible deniability because they have the scooper. It's a smaller, it's larger space-wise, but it seems to be using less power in a way. And it's the idea of, like, we have at least 20 missing people, you know, or 12 or whatever that newspaper is. We have an established thing of like, people keep going missing at this place. We have a scooper. There's a way to excuse that. Secret of the Mimic, like Edwin's, Murray's Costume Manor doesn't have that. We don't have a string of missing people. We have people leaving the company, you know, but they're just going to work for Fazbear. We don't have a reason for all this being Remnant. And again, it kind of sucks because if it is Remnant, then that makes so much sense that the whole game we're being directed by M2 to redirect Remnant into the main manor. Because we see that in the main manor, all the pipes that we've been turning on throughout the game are redirected into Edwin's house. So the idea of like M1 being like, I want you to make M2. I'm going to trick you to redirect all the factory's Remnant into the main manor so my husband can make M2 with Remnant. That makes so much sense. But the one thing that ruins all of it is that we don't have any victims to be the Remnant. There's no people to be that Remnant. So I don't see it. You know, like, I think there's a couple people you could say maybe died. Like the person who would use Springlock maybe dying here and there, but I can't see any more than like 3 or 4 people maybe dying at Murray's Costume. There's no, as far as I'm aware, there's not a single log or message about like, yeah, somebody died here. It's all, besides like David and Fiona, it's all people like, I'm getting hurt, I'm gonna quit, so they're not gonna die. Like, I don't know. Not to mention, the only people we do see dead in this game are Fazbear employees getting stuffed into suits. And their bodies are still intact and alive. Oh, not alive, but their bodies are still intact. So it's not Remnant, right? Like, I mean, there's not a clean way to explain why spirits would be in this metal. Because everything else I agree with. Everything else I'm like, yes, the metal is glowing, it's molten, it's being pushed through everywhere. The whole idea is that it's being collected in a recycling center where we're reusing something like Remnant. But it doesn't, I can't figure out a reason why there would be that many victims. I really can't. I think it's just molten metal being used to power something. But thank you for your question. Hey, if any of you can figure it out, let me know. I'll make a video on it. Our next question comes from Crimson Dragonfly. They, them. 1 out of 3 Fazbear employees has confidence in you. Henry, William, and Ralph? Dispatch? This is a line Dispatch says. 1 out of 3 Fazbear employees have confidence in you. Does this mean that the number of Fazbear employees is divisible by 3? Or did Dispatch only ask 2 other people? Maybe the 2 nearest where Dispatch is actually calling from? In fact, Dispatch's identity is bugging me. Who the flip is Dispatch? The shareholder from Sister Location, some mystery CEO, a mysterious third founder, a former MCM employee who walked off with Edmund's recording technology? Why are you giving instructions to employees and also getting circus baby designs from William, Andy Fields? Yeah, Dispatch is an interesting character because clearly I think it's clear that Dispatch's voice is captured eventually and used by Fazbear, probably via mimic technology. And I think Dispatch is the guy whose voice is used here on out, right? Like, that's very clear. The question is, who is Dispatch, right? I don't think it's Ralph. Because I think Ralph joins in from MCM. I like that theory a lot. And I think Ralph joins up fully later on. I like the timeline there could work. But just Dispatch is so disconnected from how Ralph is characterized. Dispatch is very like, if you die, you die. Fazbear is going to protect you. It'll be fine. And he's like making jokes, right? Like, one of us believes in you, but I wouldn't place a bet on that. That's not very... Ralph is a little bit too nice to be Dispatch, frankly. So I really don't know. I mean, maybe, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I think Dispatch is someone we either haven't met or just... I think your last idea is probably the most accurate. That one of the MCM employees that Fazbear yoinked was Dispatch, and like he's the guy who went off with the recording technology. That being said, you are right to point out 1 out of 3 Fazbear employees has confidence in you. That does kind of set up that it's William, Henry, and Dispatch, which is crazy. I don't know. Maybe it is like maybe it's easier than we're thinking. Maybe it is just like, they're placing bets around the office and a third of the people think so. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's something worthwhile to think about. I can't think of any evidence we have to actually say who Dispatch is besides, that's weird, But I did want to bring it up. Maybe this will spur somebody to look into it. But thank you for your question, and cool username, by the way. Again, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, you can send them to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com, which is in the description to copy and paste. It's pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.